where the wisdom flows, ancient wisdom narrated for today. Tales of the earth where the fire still glows, for young and old, a guiding light. Let native story heart wake your soul today.
Help! Help! Somebody, I beg, help! Tayo! Please help me! I screamed, my voice echoing through the cold, empty room. But no one came. The only response was my own desperate cry bouncing off the walls. My hands and feet were tied with rough ropes that dug painfully into my skin every time I struggled. I was alone, trapped, and terrified. The dim light of a single bulb flickered overhead, casting eerie shadows on the cracked walls. How did I end up here? My thoughts were racing as I tried to make sense of it all. The last memory I had was being with Tayo, my best friend since childhood. But now it felt like everything I knew about him was a lie. Was this his plan all along? The betrayal stung worse than the cuts on my wrists. How could the person I trusted the most lead me into a trap? Betrayal, they say, cuts deeper than any knife. But the story you're about to listen to will cut deeper than a two-edged sword. Welcome to my channel, where I tell folk tales and stories that ignite your consciousness of the world around you and its complexities. Sit back and listen to this story that will arouse the curiosity in you and get you counting your friends, that is, if you have any. Also, give a thumbs up to my channel if you enjoy stories like this. Remember to subscribe to my channel for more life lesson stories. There were friends that stuck closer than brothers, bound by trust and dreams, but one decision and one action, that bond shattered. A single lie turned loyalty into betrayal, and a desperate race for survival began. How far would you go to save your life when the one hunting you is your family? Well, sit back, relax, and grab a pack of popcorn. This story will leave you speechless as well as enlighten you.
Let native story heart wake your soul today.
Let's dive in. It all began under the dusty skies of Ibadan, where dreams were big, pockets were empty, and friendship were supposed to last forever. Tayo and I grew up in the same neighborhood. He lived just 3 houses down from us. We were more like brothers than friends. Everyone in the community knew that wherever you see Eniola, you will see Tayo also. We were inseparable. If one of us got into trouble, the other one would be there to share the blame. We played football together every evening after school. Our laughter filled the dusty streets. I was a skinny kid with oversized shoes, always struggling to keep up, while Tayo was the star player. He was confident, strong, and popular. He was everything I wanted to be. But what made our friendship special was how he never made me feel less. If I miss a goal, he'll pat me on the back and say, "Don't worry, Eniola, you'll get the next one." We'll dream together, share secrets, and protected each other. It was Tayo who gave me the courage to talk about my dreams of becoming a doctor. He'll always tell me, "One day, Eniola, you'll be the best doctor in Nigeria." I'll laugh it off, thinking it was just pep talk. But his belief in me made me believe too. But life in our small neighborhood wasn't easy. My father had passed away when I was young, leaving my mother to raise me all alone. She worked long hours selling food at the market just to put me through school. I studied hard, wanting to make her proud, but money was always a problem. Sometimes I worried I'd never be able to finish school, that my dreams of becoming a doctor would stay just that, dreams. It was during one of those difficult times that Tayo came to me with what seemed like a perfect opportunity. Eniola, I've got great news, he said one evening, his face lighting up with excitement. We were sitting on a bench outside his house, the warm evening breeze rustling the leaves around us. There is a job in Lagos, good pay, and they're looking for smart, hardworking people like you. My heart skipped a beat. A job in Lagos? That was unheard of for boys like us. Really? But what kind of job is it? I asked cautiously. It was a big company, he said, waving his hand dismissively. Something like an office boy. They need young men to help with office work, and I know you'll be perfect for it. Plus, the pay is really good. If you save up, you could go to medical schools in no time. I should have questioned him more. I should have asked for details, asked why he was so eager to take me along, but I didn't. I was blinded by the thought of finally being able to help my mother, of finally making my dreams come true. And above all, I trusted Tayo. He was my friend. No, he was more like my brother. So I agreed. We told my mother I was going to stay with a relative for a while. She was reluctant at first, worried about me going to the big city. But Tayo reassured her. He even convinced her to give me a small amount of money for the journey. I'll take good care of him, ma. He promised. Be careful, my son, she said, hugging me tightly, and come back soon. I promised I would. We set off early the next morning. The bus ride to Lagos was long and bumpy. As we left Ibadan behind, I looked out the window, watching the familiar sights fade away. It was my first time leaving the town, and I felt a mix of excitement and anxiety. Tayo kept talking about how amazing Lagos was, how there were opportunities everywhere, and how we were going to change our lives. I listened, letting his words soothe my nerves. But as we got closer to Lagos, something changed. Tayo grew quieter, his face more serious. I asked him if something was wrong, but he just shook his head, brushing off my concerns. I'm just thinking about the future, Eniola, he said. Everything will be fine. I believed him. When we finally arrived, Lagos was exactly as I imagined. Loud, crowded, and full of life. The street buzzed with activity. People hurried past, car honked incessantly, and vendors shouted from every corner. I felt small and overwhelmed, but Tayo seemed to know where he was going. He led me through the chaotic streets, turning corners and waving through crowds until we reached a small, run-down building at the end of a narrow alley. This is it? I asked, looking around skeptically. The place looked abandoned, with cracked walls and broken windows. It didn't look like any office I had ever seen. Don't worry, Tayo said quickly. This is just where we'll meet the bus. Something in his tone made me uneasy, but I didn't say anything. I followed him up the creaky stairs to a wooden door. He knocked twice, and a man I didn't recognize opened the door. He was tall and muscular, with a face that looked like it had been carved from stone. His eyes were cold as he looked me up and down. This is the boy? He asked, his voice low and rough. Yes, Tayo replied, avoiding my gaze. The man grunted and stepped aside, letting us in. The room was dimly lit, with a few bare bulbs hanging from the ceiling. A group of men sat around a table, talking in hushed tone. They stopped when we entered, turned to stare at me. I shifted uncomfortably, feeling their eyes on me. Come here, boy, one of them said, gesturing for me to step forward. I hesitated, looking at Tayo for guidance, but he just nodded. Slowly, I walked over to the man. He grabbed my arm roughly, looking me over. Then he just turned to Tayo. You've done well. Done well? I asked, confused. What's going on here? I thought. Before I could finish, the man shoved me towards another door. I stumbled, nearly falling. Panic flared in my chest. Hey, what are you doing? Let go of me. But Tayo didn't move. He just stood there, watching silently as they dragged me away. I shouted his name, begged him to help me, but he didn't even blink. That was when I realized the truth. There was no job. There was no opportunity. Tayo had brought me here for something else. He had betrayed me. I fought against the men, struggling with every ounce of strength I had, but it was no use. They were strong. They tied me up, threw me into a small room, and slammed the doors shut. They kept me there, tied up and alone. The room was dark, the only light coming from a small barred window high above. They brought me food and water, but never spoke to me. I could hear them talking outside, sometimes laughing and joking, as if nothing was wrong, as if I wasn't trapped just a few feet away. I lost track of time. Hours bled into days and days into weeks. My hope began to fade. What were they planning to do with me? Still had no idea. And Tayo, my best friend, he was the one who had led me into this. The thought of it made me sick. One night, the men were arguing outside my door. Their voices were tense, angry, and I pressed my ear to the door, trying to eavesdrop. He's too much trouble, always shouting, one of them said. We should just get rid of him. No, another replied. The boss wants him alive. He'll be worth more than that. Alive? I thought desperately. What were they planning? Then suddenly the door swung open and one of the men stormed in. They grabbed me roughly, hauling me to my feet. I struggled, but they were too strong for me. Time to move, one of them growled. Move where? I demanded, my voice shaking. What are you going to do with me? I shouted. But they didn't answer. They just dragged me down the hall out into the night. I blinked against the sudden brightness, my eyes adjusting to the lights of the streets outside. The cool air hit my face, and for a moment I felt a flicker of hope. Maybe I could run from here. Maybe I could just escape. But they tightened their grip on my arm, holding me like a prisoner. There were more men waiting outside, a group of them, all wearing dark clothes and looking serious. They had a small van parked by the curb. Its back doors were open. My heart sank as they shoved me inside, slamming the door shut behind. The van roared to life, the engine rumbling as we sped off into the night. I was thrown back against the metal wall of the van, my head hitting the cold surface. The van was pitch dark, the windows covered. I couldn't see anything, but I could hear the men talking in low voices up front. Where are you taking me? I yelled, but my voice was swallowed by the roar of the engine. Fear clouded my heart. My mind raced, imagining all the horrible things they could do to me. I had heard stories of people disappearing in big cities, people who were never seen again. Was that going to happen to me? Was I going to vanish without a trace, leaving my mother to wonder what happened? Hours seemed to pass. I lost track of time. The constant motion of the van making me dizzy and disoriented. Every bump in the road sent me tumbling, my hands still bound behind my back. I felt helpless, trapped like a caged animal. Finally, the van came to its halt. The doors were flung open and harsh light flooded in, blinding me. Rough hands grabbed me, dragged me out into the open. I blinked my eyes, struggling to adjust. Oh, it is morning already. We were in the middle of nowhere. I saw tall trees surrounded us, their dark shapes looming against the starry sky. The air was cool and smell of damp earth. There was no sign of the city, no sign of life, just darkness and silence. Where are we? I asked, my voice trembling. Shut up, one of the men snapped, shoving me forward. I stumbled, nearly falling. They marched me through the trees, their grips on my arm like iron. I tried to look around to figure out where I was, but everything looked the same, endless trees and shadows. I walked for what felt like forever until we came to a clearing. A small rundown cabin stood in the middle. It looked abandoned, like no one had lived there for years. The men pushed me inside, slamming the door shut behind us. The inside was even worse. The floor was covered with dirt, and cobweb hung from the ceiling. A single light bulb dangled from the wire, casting a dim glow over the room. They shoved me into a corner, untying my hands. "What are you doing?" I yelled. One of the men crouched down in front of me and saying in a harsh tone, "You better keep mute, boy, because your struggles are of no use." The days that followed were a blur of fear and confusion. They kept me alone in that cabin, feeding me only enough to keep me alive, at least once a day with bread and water. They didn't speak much to me, but I could hear them talking outside, sometimes whispering with low voices, sometimes laughing loud. I caught bits and pieces of their conversation, words like buyer and shipment. It took me a while to put the pieces together. They were planning to sell me. I was nothing more than cargo to them, something they could trade for money. My stomach twisted with fear. Who would buy a boy like me? What would they do to me? I tried to escape, but every time I made a move, they were there watching. They laughed at my attempt, mocking me. "There is no way out, boy," one of them snapped one day. "You belong to us now." The thought of being sold, of being taken to some unknown places where I'd never see my mother again, filled me with despair. I felt like giving up, like just letting them do what they wanted. But every time I thought of my mother's face, of her waiting for me to come home, I found a spark of strength. I had to go out of there. I had to find a way. One night, while the men were sitting outside drinking and talking, I noticed something. The ropes around my wrists had loosened slightly. It wasn't much, just a tiny bit of slack, but it was enough. Slowly, carefully, I began to work at the knots, using my finger to tug and pull. It took hours. Sweat dripped down my face as I struggled, my heart pounding with fear. I kept glancing at the window, at the door, expecting one of the men to burst in at any moment, but they didn't. They were too busy with their own conversation, too distracted. Finally, I felt the ropes give way. My hands were free. I didn't waste a second. I untied my ankle and crept to the window. The bolts were loose, and with a few careful pushes, I managed to pry one open. I squeezed through the gap, my heart racing. Outside, the night was cold and silent. The men were sitting around a fire, short distance away, their backs to me. I took a deep breath and ran. I ran as far as I could, the branches scratching at my face and tearing at my clothes. I didn't look back. I didn't stop. My only thought was to get away, to put as much distance between me and those men as possible. But too bad. They noticed, maybe from the sound of my footsteps. "Hey, he's gone!" I heard one of them shout. Panic surged through me as I heard them crashing through the trees behind me. I pushed myself harder, my legs burning with effort. I could hear them getting closer, their footsteps pounding against the ground. "Stop, you little rat!" one of them growled, but I didn't stop. I couldn't. Up ahead, I saw a road. It was empty and quiet. If I could just get there, I thought. If I could just get over there, maybe someone might help me. I busted out of the trees, stumbling onto the asphalt. I looked around wildly, searching for any sign of help, but there was nothing, just darkness and empty road. The men were right behind me now. I could hear them shouting, feel their presence closing in. My lungs burned. My legs felt like they were going about to give up, but I kept running. Then, out of nowhere, a pair of headlights appeared, blinding me. A car was approaching. "Help!" I screamed. waving my hands frantically. Please help me. With my hands waving, the car screeched to a stop and the door flew open. A man stepped out, looking shocked. What? What are you doing here, boy? But before I could answer, the man burst out of the trees behind me. The man's eyes widened and he grabbed my arm, pulling me right into the car. Get in quickly. I didn't need to be told twice. I jumped into the car. The man slammed the door behind me. He turned and faced the man, his face hardening. Back off, he shouted. Leave the boy alone. The men hesitated, their faces twisted with anger. But the man didn't back down. He stood his ground, his eyes blazing. Go back where you came from, he growled, before I call the police. For a moment, I thought they were going to attack him, but then slowly they backed away, disappearing into the trees. The man turned to me, his expression softening. Are you okay, son? I nodded, tears streaming down my face. Thank you, sir. Thank you so much. He nodded and reached for his phone. We're going to call the police, he said gently, and we're going to get you home. The days that followed were a whirlwind. It was interview upon interview. The man that rescued me led the police to the spot where he picked me from. The bushes were searched, though they found the cabin, but the men were not found. The police boss hinted that they might be involved in a human trafficking ring and that I was just lucky to make it out. I finally got united with my mother, who was overjoyed to see me. It took a long time for me to heal. The nightmare didn't go away so easily. I had trouble trusting people, always looking over my shoulders, afraid that someone else might betray me. But slowly, with my mom's love and support, I began to rebuild my life. I went back to school, worked hard, and eventually I graduated from college. The end. This story reminds us that trust is fragile. Once broken, it rarely returns the same, just like an elastic pulled beyond its elastic limit. Thank you so much for being a part of today's story. Share your thoughts in the comments and what touched you most in this story. Don't forget to like this video if you were inspired or learned a lesson from it. Share with someone. You can never tell the extent of help you can offer. And if you haven't already, please subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss our next powerful story.